Once upon a time, in a quiet northern city where the winters arrived early and stayed long, there lived a 30-year-old woman named Grace. Grace was thoughtful, capable, and full of intention. She intended to apply for the senior position at her company before the quarter ended. She intended to finish the online course she had enrolled in 4 months ago and not opened in 3. She intended to call her father more often, repair the friendship she had let go quiet, start the morning routine she had designed in careful detail one Sunday evening and never once followed. She intended to do all of these things. She just hadn't done them yet. The word she used for this was later. It was her most used word, though she never said it aloud. She said it silently, efficiently, dozens of times a day later when things settle, when I have more energy, when the week calms down. Later was not a decision, it felt like a pause. It felt responsible, even like she was protecting the important things by waiting until she could give them proper attention. What she did not see was that later had a cost, not a dramatic cost, not a sudden loss, a quiet one, the kind that accumulates the way interest accumulates invisibly, consistently, until the total is something you never would have agreed to pay if anyone had shown it to you at the beginning. One afternoon, Grace sat across from her colleague Diane, who had just been offered the senior position Grace had been meaning to apply for. Diane was not more qualified. Grace knew this clearly and honestly without bitterness. Diane had simply applied. She had done, in one afternoon 3 weeks ago, the thing Grace had been meaning to do for 2 months. Grace congratulated her warmly and drove home in a silence that was not peaceful. She called her older sister Beth that evening. Beth was 38, direct in the way that only people who have learned things the hard way tend to be, and had no particular patience for comfortable self-deception. Grace told her about Diane, about the position, about the months of meaning to apply. Beth listened, then she said, "Can I ask you something honestly?" "Yes," Grace said. "What did those 2 months cost you?" Grace was quiet. "Not just the job," Beth continued. "The 2 months themselves. What did you do with them that was worth more than the thing you kept putting off?" Grace thought about the 2 months, the evenings on the sofa, the scrolling, the vague sense of things waiting to be done that sat at the edge of every quiet moment and prevented the quiet from ever being fully restful. She had not used those 2 months for anything that mattered more. She had not rested properly either. She had simply existed in the space between intending and doing, which is one of the most expensive places a person can live and one of the least comfortable. "Nothing," Grace said finally. "I didn't do anything with them. That's what procrastination actually costs," Beth said. "Not just the thing you delayed. It costs you the time you spent not doing it, because that time is never free. You carry the undone thing with you every day. It sits in the back of your mind and quietly drains something: your energy, your confidence, your belief that you are someone who follows through. And then the opportunity closes and you lose both. The thing you wanted and the peace you were trying to protect by waiting." Grace sat with that for a long time after hanging up. She opened her laptop, not for the job that window had closed, but for the course she had not opened in 3 months. She completed the first lesson that evening. It took 22 minutes. She had spent more time than that, on more evenings than she could count, thinking about how she should really get back to it. She called her father the next morning before work. The call lasted 11 minutes. He sounded pleased in a way that stayed with her through the entire day. Small things, but they were done now, and done things have a different weight than intended things. They do not sit at the edge of your quiet moments asking for attention. They simply are, finished, real yours. Grace did not transform overnight, but she began to notice the cost of later more clearly than she ever had, not as a concept but as a feeling. The specific texture of carrying something undone, and noticing it clearly made it harder to choose without awareness. So my friend, what are you carrying today that belongs in the done column? Not tomorrow. Not when things settle. The cost of later is being paid right now, quietly, whether you choose it or not. The only question is what you are buying with it.